Okay, hi everyone. Thank you for joining us this evening for the last webinar of the AEC Careers Explained series, presented by the Asian American Architects and Engineers Foundation. To be respectful of everyone's time, we're going to get started. The topic of today's webinar will focus on the C of AEC, which is the construction discipline. My name is Crystal Tan, co-chair of the Student Outreach Committee, and this is my second year on the foundation board, and I've been a member of AAae for about 4 years. Tonight, my co-host and co-chair is Alex Lin.
Yeah, hi everyone. My name is Alex Lind. I'm in my second year on the foundation board and now serving as co-chair for the Student Outreach Committee. And along with Crystal, thank you for joining this tonight's event, and we're very excited to bring this series. And tonight we also have Paulette Dallas. We'll be a moderator. Paulette, you want to give an introduction to yourself?
Yeah, hi everybody. I'm Paulette Dallas. I work for ACE Mentor of America. I joined the AAae board last year, and thank you so much, Alex and Crystal, for inviting me to be the moderator today.
Thank you. And let's go to agenda. Crystal.
All right, so here's the agenda for the evening. First, we'll talk about the AAae Foundation and the mission behind the organization. We will then go into a brief description of the project roles of an AEC team. Third, we have a Q&A with our wonderful panel, and last, closing remarks. So every year, the foundation dedicates itself to help students and young professionals with scholarship support and educational events such as this webinar. We are always looking for students and young professionals to participate, to learn more about how we can help them grow, and to volunteer in our efforts to engage and make a difference in the AEC community. It is really important for people early in their career to get out there, see what we do in the real world, and this is a good way to do that. Sometimes some ways to get involved are through the scholarship and student outreach committees. If you want to learn more, please reach out to us.
Great, thanks, Crystal, and for explaining the purpose and the mission of AAae. And one of the main reasons we want to host this series is to provide more value to our student members. And we also want to start our discussion today with kind of all the different roles within the AEC industry. So like Crystal said, this is our last series, which will focus on construction. If you go check our YouTube web page, we will have previous events to discuss about architects and engineering and other building engineering. So this is kind of all the different roles we have in the AEC industry. With that, let's have Paulette introduce. Oh, yes, talked about Construction Inclusion Week.
Yeah, so everybody, this week happens to be Construction Inclusion Week. This started last year. So this is the first year it's kicked off. This is back in 2020, a group of general contractors got together and started Time for Change. So its sole purpose for this whole week was to identify ways to advance diversity, equity, and inclusion in construction. So they came up with 5 days of all kinds of activities, and there's a theme for each day. Today's theme is unconscious bias. And if you wanted to go onto the site, the construction inclusion site, there are lots of toolkits. So there's a toolkit for social media. There's also toolkits to start conversations in your office and just kind of spread awareness of this whole Construction Inclusion Week. So if you're on social media at all this week, you'll definitely see lots of posts and things being shared. I encourage everyone to share something about their path this week and tag Construction Inclusion Week. It's a really great way to build momentum on this whole project. Thank you. Right, so with that, we are going to let the panel introduce themselves. We are super excited today to invite these 4 people from far and near to join our AAae panel today to give us an introduction to the construction industry and how everyone has to really work together in construction, building their networks to build things. So why don't we go ahead and just go with who's ever first on my screen, and that's Christy. Christy, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I'm Christy Fu. I'm based in Los Angeles, and I started off in this career path with a civil engineering degree, and then I went on to work for Scranton Builders, a contractor, for a couple of years, worked on some fun projects. Then I went to work for the owner side, and now I'm at Arcadis for about 12 years, and I mostly work on construction claims and scheduling on various projects.
Great, thank you, Christy. Next on my screen is Corey. Corey, why don't you introduce yourself to our group today?
Hello, everyone. I'm Corey Kramer. I work for Jacobs Engineering. I also started out as a civil engineer grad and got into the field working for Jacobs on a project for SoCal Gas, managing safety enhancements to their pipeline systems, and then made the switch a few years back into our aviation division, managing projects at airports. And so far, I've worked on a couple of projects at LAX, building a new hangar for Delta Airlines, and now working on terminal construction, managing projects for the airport, overseeing airlines making modifications to the terminals.
Great, thanks, Corey. I was at LAX for Moore Meadows for a couple of years, and I loved working out there. I mean, there's a lot of things that happen, but it's really, really fun. All right, next on my screen is Selena. Selena, would you like to tell us a little bit about yourself? Don't forget to unmute.
Thank you, Paulette. Thank you for having me here. Hello, everyone. My name is Selena Durrell. I am a project coordinator for a nonprofit organization called Tradeswomen Inc. My career pathway is construction advocacy. That's not where I started. I got into the trades in 2016. I was 35 years old. I was working a dead-end job. And I heard about construction. My younger brother was a pile driver for the carpenters, and I saw what he did. He got to travel across the country, working on projects, and I just really liked seeing how empowered he was to see things come alive and build things, right? So 35 years old, I said, I'm tired of working this, these dead-end jobs, and I saw a program that the welfare office was having, and I took it. It was like a boot camp, and I did 3 months of learning a little bit about the trades as a multi-craft. And once I graduated from that, I said, out of all these things, carpentry, electrical, I really liked carpentry. And so that was my first time hearing of a union, carpenters union. So at 35 years old, I joined the carpenters union. And I just remember it being extremely empowering, going from making $15 an hour at, working temp jobs to actually, having benefits and getting prevailing wage. So that's how I got into the trades. I'm the first, other than my younger brother, I don't have any, my father or uncle, not in construction. So this was fairly new to me. I loved what I did. I did concrete formwork. I worked for Tudor Perini and Turner Construction. I did a lot of concrete form work. So I really love that, seeing things, come alive, being able to go back and, show my child, hey, mommy helped build that. As I got into those trades, I eventually heard about the elevators union and applied for that and got into that. And I really enjoyed that as well. And that opened up so many more doors. There's so many other career pathways once you get into apprenticeships. One of them is advocacy and outreach. There's, so many more things that you can do once you get into construction. So being in the trades kind of led me into the advocacy. And so what I do now as a program coordinator, I've been doing this for about 2 years. So still fairly new to the advocacy side. I've been in the trades for about 3. But I love doing outreach and empowering men and women and our youth, and helping them explore the non-traditional trades, well, for women anyway, construction. So thank you again for having me.
Thank you, Selena. And I think just your story right there is why I love construction so much, right? There's a million different paths to get here. And I love hearing everybody's story. So thank you. All right. And last on my screen is Ty. Ty maybe is coming from the zooming in from the farthest on this panel. Let's why don't you introduce yourself to the rest of the group.
Thanks, Paulette, and thanks for having me. Hello, everybody. My name is Ty Nguyen, and like Paulette said, I am currently on the island of Maui here in Hawaii. So it's 2:40 p.m. right now, so I'm not drinking like the rest of you. I guess we have students here, so no one should be drinking really. I moved here July 1st, 2020. So yes, during the heart of the pandemic, to be the area manager of Nordic PCO Construction. Hope I'll talk about how I got here. But we are a general contractor with offices across North America. Some projects I worked on when I was in California were the renovation of UCLA's Poly Pavilion, and most recently, the Dodger Stadium improvements. Hope they pull out the victory tonight. We were down 5-2 when I jumped on this call. But I've been in the industry for over 13 years now, and it all really started by chance. 19 years ago, in my senior year of high school, a program called the AAae Mentor Program, which stands for Architecture, Construction, and Engineering, came to the West Coast for the first time. And my high school, John Marshall High in Los Feliz, was selected as one of the first three. My buddy who really wanted to be an architect was all over this program. I, on the other hand, wanted to be an astronaut or a social worker. That's what I narrowed it down to. But they were giving away free pizza, so I went. Then I went on field trips, the Disney Concert Hall being one of them. And then I just grew a huge fascination for buildings and construction as a whole. And it just happened to be my senior year. I had applied to colleges already, ended up going to Cal Poly San Luis Obispo, majoring in construction management. During that time, I did 3 internships with Clark Construction in LA, and then my final summer with PCL in Honolulu, Hawaii. I've held positions of field engineer, project manager. I ran the special projects department before accepting a transfer out here to Maui, where, like I said, I'm the area manager, and we're working on $101 high school here in Kihei. Just a lot of hospitality, hotel work. Happy to be here.
Another reason I love construction can lead you to Hawaii. That sounds so wonderful. That's so great. All right, so we'll start asking some questions. Corey, I was wondering, were you always in aviation, or how did you end up in aviation in that department?
Thanks, Paulette. Yeah, so I started out, as I said, in my career working on utility work, managing natural gas pipelines, and was enjoying it a little bit, but was getting a little bit tired of just managing underground work and want to get into something more vertical. And I luckily met Taven Sachs, who I see is on this call at this moment, in our Jacobs group, who was in our aviation division, and got to hear from him about all the different projects going on and what the aviation world was like. And I started to realize how, for a civil engineer, I studied and worked on airports, you can go and build every single type of civil project. You've got roads, you've got bridges, you've got buildings, you've got all these different items to work on. And it was an exciting opportunity. So I badgered him over and over to try and get me my foot in the door with our aviation group, and luckily was able to line up a position and make the switch to the aviation group, and have loved it ever since. It's been really, really quite interesting.
Yeah, it is. I was just at LAX, and just from when I was there a few years back, there's so many things that are so different.
We got a lot of moving parts right now. There's construction in every corner of that airport. It's a challenging place to work, but it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, definitely. I remember even doing just parking for all our, our workers was, I can't even imagine what it is now, because we had that whole Terminal 1 parking lot for all of our workers, and now I don't know where they're parking. Glad I don't have to deal with that anymore. We'll go over to Christy. Christy, how did you get into, can you describe a little bit about what you do during your day? I know you were on a busy project all week when we had spoken. So how did you describe a little bit about what you do?
Yeah, sure. So what I do now is on a construction project, most of them are the complicated ones. When there's a contractor that has a change order that goes wrong and it becomes disputed, it usually sues the owner for damages. And so then I get involved at that phase to evaluate the merits of that claim, that dispute, and also look at if there are delays. So I think all of you guys have heard some projects go much longer than they're supposed to. And so you look at why did it go long, and look at the schedule, what's concurrent, and where the liability lies. And so a lot of times we try to resolve that during construction. And I get involved and sit people down like, hey, look, put your egos aside. Let's figure this out, right? But a lot of times that doesn't happen. So in that case, that's where I was last week, was in some sort of mini trial where we had an all-day presentation from one party, and then we heard the other party, and we had a rebuttal. So it was like a 4-day deal where, yeah, you're right, I didn't sleep very much. You kind of wake up in the middle of the night thinking, oh, I should, include this argument in my slides. And you want to put your best foot forward. So it's very fun. And there's a question. So I was wondering if I can take a little bit longer to explain how I got to this.
Yeah, please do.
I got into it because when I graduated, I went to work for a contractor, like I mentioned, and I was following superintendents around. I'm a girl. I didn't ever touch a hammer in my life. And so I knew I had to go out, get dirty, like learn how things are built. And then I realized that I was the one taking notes, taking photos and then labeling it. And so I'm just a little more detail oriented and better at documentationing than others. And so I started putting together claims to our owner and change orders because I was a little better than letter writing and finding out what's in the contract than others. I don't mind reading, figuring out what's happening. And then that kind of became my job because superintendent was like, oh, can you do this full time? And I was like, I don't know what this is, but okay, let me start doing this. And then I realized I was in the office the whole time. And I said, no, I don't want to be in an office. That was why I wanted to be in the field. So I got put up in the field again, but what had happened was I kind of fell back into it by accident. The CM firm I was working for, it was 2008 and all the project just ended and this position was open. So I thought, okay, I'll do claims for like a year, I'll look through documents, whatever. And then 12 years later, I'm still here because it is interesting to kind of figure out what happened and why did this happen. And I get to work on, like right now I'm on like 5 different projects because it's unusual that you're actually on a claim like full time for an extended period of time. So it's kind of interesting. And no, you don't need a legal background. I work with attorneys a lot. They're like my best buddies. But I don't, I don't have a legal background.
Chrissy, do you have to go to the job sites or do you mostly do, are you working with these attorneys within your office or do you have to go out there and like actually show them things?
Yeah, it depends on the job. So the one I worked on a few years ago was like a $1 billion program. So they needed me there the entire time. So I was going in the field every single day because we didn't have time to kind of go look at their documents. I needed to be there and take photos and document things like right away. But that's when construction's happening. Now, when clients wait until the project's over, then obviously I'm, working in the office and not, going to a job site. Of course, I want to see what it looks like because I need to understand what had happened. But a lot of my colleagues actually work in the field office. A lot of our projects are like over $1 billion. So they need, someone dedicated to resolve these changes in disputes.
So do you ever have anyone, I know you're saying they have to leave their egos, but have you ever been like had to break up something that got very serious?
Yes. Yeah. Oh my goodness. So I've been into partnering meetings where they're just yelling at each other and I'm the new person in the room. And besides eating lunch, nothing else happens. And so nothing productive at least. So yeah, it was challenging because I don't know their personality. So what we do when we go in, and I hate to say we kind of always go into that kind of project because that's what we do. I just remain calm. And then for that particular project, I took over the meeting. I said, okay, what is our objective? I'm going to start a action item list and I follow up with people during that week. And it just remained calm. And I listen. You're kind of like a therapist, okay, listen, and they're angry. They're not happy, but at the end, we're here because we all want to see projects get built. And I think if you direct them, the energy towards that, like, oh, look at this amazing thing that we're building, creating, and of course, resolving the changes, it all comes down to money, right? Who is getting paid, who's not getting paid. It calms down actually.
Well, that sounds really pretty exciting. So when you went to school, what did you start doing in school when you first went?
Oh yeah, this is an interesting story. I think you know this. So when I started at Berkeley, I actually wanted to be in business administration. So my family's kind of traditional. So we're from Taiwan and I think I didn't have that many choices. So I think it was just business, or you can work at a bank or be a doctor or something. But so then I needed 1 unit to qualify for financial aid. And the only seminar that was available on campus was the civil engineering seminar. And I had no idea what it is, but it was the only thing open. I needed it to qualify for financial aid. And so I took the seminar and I was like, oh my gosh, this is so interesting. They talked about bridges and buildings. And so I secretly applied, switched my major, didn't tell any of my parents or family because it's kind of, so, and I got in. Well, another thing is I think it's hard to get in to Berkeley engineering anyways, but somehow I got in. And then it took me like 2 years to tell them. I don't know if anyone on the call has the same cultural barriers, but it was ridiculous. And even last year, 2019, I went back to Taiwan. I mean, I'm like 40 years old now. It's been 25 years. My aunt is still like, so are you still in that guy's profession, like that your cousin's in, working on buildings or something? And I was like, oh my God, this is ridiculous. So it's kind of funny.
That's a great story. Yeah, absolutely. I've heard so many stories like that where people are just like, oh yeah, I'll just take this class. And then it's so interesting. I mean, construction, there's so many moving parts too. And I feel like this construction world ties them all together, right? We have a lot of people in this industry, and construction people have to really talk to the architects, the engineers, the trades folks, everyone, the owners, everybody, and bring them all together. You can't work in a little silo in this industry.
Yeah, Paula, and I've noticed that everyone on this panel, and maybe Corey as well, that we kind of fell into it, right? It's not like we plan our lives this way.
Yeah. So that we'll open it up. Corey, would you like to tell us a little bit about how you fell into this industry as well?
Yeah, so I, when I was applying for college, had clicked engineer a bunch of times in all my applications, and looking back, had no idea what an engineer actually did, but thought it was interesting. I always was the math science brain type and thought it sounded like something, the more realistic version of it, where rubber meets the ground. And it turned out that was correct. And I got I was trying to choose which type of engineering field to go into, and I had a friend at school who was looking at civil, and I went and checked a few classes with him and just found it to be the most interesting part of the field. I think I was kind of envisioning that there was going to be a lot of investment coming in utilities and roads and bridges, as we constantly hear that our infrastructure is crumbling. So I thought it was a good field to try and get my feet into. And So that's how I ended up as a civil engineer. And then since school, it's been going quite well. I've really enjoyed the work. I mean, for me, the most rewarding part is really seeing projects come out of the ground and become something that everyone can use or utilize, and taking a step back and be like, I helped build this project. I mean, the first project I worked at LAX was this hangar for Delta Airlines, and about a year into the project, we've fully, the steel's up, the siding's up, the building's over 200 feet tall, and I'm on a hike in the Santa Monica Mountains, and I can see my building from the hike all the way down over there, and I screamed with just excitement getting to see. I was like, oh, look, I built something physical, and it's just such a rewarding experience to really make a change to and see the construction project come to life. And then getting involved with the terminals and working more on the customer facing side of LAX, it's really fun because I get to affect the airport that all of my friends and family use all the time, and really make a change there on something that really helps and affects the community. So it's exciting. It's really exciting work. It really has a tangible experience, and you get to feel the progress almost daily as you work through these projects.
Yeah, that airport's very, very exciting. One of my jobs was making labels for all the conduit. So I always took pride when I was like walking through the Southwest Terminal when they were building it. I was like, do you see those? Because a lot of people were just handwriting them on there. Our labels were nice and perfect. And I was like, I did thousands and thousands, probably of miles of labels. That was one of my big jobs out there. But I also liked when I was working at the airport that I knew what restaurants were coming in. I thought it's really cool how they now, I've noticed this in other airports where they have, local restaurants, local famous restaurants in the airport. One of my favorite places in LA is the Farmers Market on 3rd and Fairfax. I go there as much as I can, with anybody, grandparents, babies. It's great for everyone. And I noticed that they had one of their kiosks, or one of their actual shops was a lot from there.
Yeah, definitely. That's a cool part that they're incorporating into airports now, is a lot of local flavor and focusing on trying to make it a fun experience. It's very interesting. You often work with companies that manage malls, and they are brought in to manage the airport concessionaires because it's a very similar experience. So we work with Westfield a lot. And right now on my project, we're more on the design stage, currently permitting with the building department, and allocated spaces for concessionaires coming down the line. But we haven't ironed out exactly which companies will be in, but I'm excited to be involved in that selection process and see who we can bring in from the local area.
It's exciting. Now when you go to an airport and there's not anything, you're like, wait, where's all the restaurants and where's the shopping? I can't spend 3 hours here wasting all my money waiting for my next flight. So a lot of things happening, a lot of moving parts for sure. It's pretty exciting. Ms. Lena, so you were talking a little bit about how it took you a little bit to get in, to find the trade, get comfortable there, and make all your transitions and become really happy there. What were some of the things that you were doing before that until you found construction?
Good question. My background was more in retail. I was a department manager for Lowe's and Home Depot, and I worked in the flooring department. And so I dealt with a lot of tile and flooring, carpet, vinyl, and all that. Never occurred to me that there's actual trades that do this kind of stuff. Never. And so that's I knew I liked working with my hands. Just really didn't dawn on me until my mid-30s. And I'm sure we all hear this, at some point or another, is, God, I wish I got in when I was right out of high school. And yes, I do, and that's what I'm passionate about now, is spreading the word. I got in when I was 35, but, construction for me personally was kind of like what like a fallback career. I didn't know about it. And when I did find out, I got in. But for our younger generation, it doesn't have to be a fallback career. That's why I'm passionate about it, is because if I can get in at 35, only have a high school diploma, it is extremely rewarding to know that these opportunities exist out there.
I love all that you're saying. I mean, I work for ACE Mentor, and that's one of my biggest passions is just, educating students like, hey, there's multiple paths to get into this construction business. When I was at Meadows, we put kids through school. We started them out, wherever they wanted. If they wanted to stick around, my boss would like send them to school. So they were getting education as they were working. And I just think it's such a welcoming industry. There really is something for everyone. I was on a call this morning with a group that they're marketers, they're construction marketers, one of Ty's coworkers, Fawn, who I've worked with, and that's what they work, in marketing. So you don't think, hey, marketing and construction, but it's a big part of construction.
Yeah, absolutely. You made me think about my very first conversation with one of the business agents when I went in to sign up for the carpenters. I did some research and I'm like, wow, this is interesting. I said, so let me get this straight. You're going to hire me. I have no experience. You're going to hire me with prevailing wage. You're going to train me. You're going to pay me to learn how to become, a skilled, a tradesperson. And the contractor is going to pay pay for my health and dental. I was like, where do I sign up? I didn't need a college degree. And to know that the trades also offer free college credits. I mean, I was totally floored that I didn't know about it a whole lot sooner. And so definitely I was like, oh, this is where do I sign? Just show me the dotted line. So yeah, very rewarding. And I've been able to work on some really, really amazing projects. And some when you get into an apprenticeship, I mean, all the opportunities open for you as well. If you want to get into civil engineering, I mean, there's all these different pathways. You don't have to necessarily go through an apprenticeship. That was my role because I didn't have, if I wanted to become a civil engineer, I didn't have any degrees or anything like that. So my route was the apprenticeship route, and it's been beneficial and rewarding and empowering. So yes.
That's awesome. I love hearing these kinds of stories for sure. And at ACE, we definitely, introduce all these different pathways. Our scholarships they can go towards trades for college. And I think AAAe has the same thing, and lots of organizations, I'm sure Tradeswomen Inc. as well, just trying to really, you don't have to not do anything until you're in your mid 30s, right? You can get started right away. That's right. Ty, would you like to throw in your anything to this?
I love everyone's story so far, so I'm just happy to be a participant and just really listen. I think I shared about how I got in already with the ACE program, but maybe I'll just add a couple of things. I think it's really cool that AAae and Paulette actually have never worked on a project together, but we've been in the same facilities, right? And worked probably with the same people. Like the LAX T1 food court for Southwest, I was the project executive over. So the Trejo's Tacos, you're talking about local cuisine, the Chick-fil-A, what else is it, Payway, right? Like so many people get to go through that terminal, and we have no idea that we've all have been interconnected somehow, some way, right? And have all worked, I think, some regard together. And I think that's really special about what our industry really is. It's talk about construction truly being a team sport. And hearing these stories just lights me up, and one of my favorite projects, I'm just going to jump in, is the UCLA Poly Pavilion project. Sitting back here, especially now in Hawaii, turning on the UCLA game during March Madness and getting to watch it, it's like, oh, that's cool. I've stood there on center court. I maybe not necessarily put that court down, but I had a hand in it. So it's really, really cool.
That's great. Ty, what does your typical day look like in Hawaii?
So there's no typical day out here. I start off by going to the beach in the morning. I'm just kidding. What I do out here, I manage the operation of the entire Maui operations. So I'm responsible for all the profit and loss. What that means is I'm responsible for bringing in work, executing it, managing the project teams, occasionally sitting across from Christy, dealing with some of the changes, things like that happened. But I don't get into the day-to-day details anymore. Really empower the team out here. And we have a team of about 28 people on Maui that execute 3 different projects out here. So what I'm really doing is checking in with the project teams, making sure that we're on schedule, within budget, checking in with the clients, making sure that we're meeting and exceeding the client's expectations, and then really finding the more work to make sure that everyone here that's currently employed is going to continue to be employed tomorrow. So that's the biggest thing that probably keeps me up at night, is finding the next project.
So you mentioned that one of your projects that you're working on right now is a school. What other couple projects are you overseeing as well?
Oh, great. We got done with the Andaz hotel renovation down on one of the resorts. So 4 stories, only 19 units. Each unit is like 5,000 square feet. They go for anywhere between 5,000 and 15,000 a night. So as you can imagine, I can't afford to. I mean, the only time I'm ever going to walk in there is when we built it. So some of the clientele that we've heard is like Russell Wilson, the quarterback of the Seahawks. We've seen Adam Sandler around. So it's like really, really cool high-end resort out there. And then down in McKenna, there's a bunch of residential homes. So we're a subcontractor to a GC. So we're doing all the concrete work, form, place, and finish out there. We have a little restaurant renovation, like bar and grill, at the Grand Wailea Resort. And then we're looking at some room renovations as well. So what I did in California, really focusing on higher education, translates here to the high school. But the one scope that I never really touched is hospitality. So definitely leaning on the expertise of everyone out here to guide. You know, it goes back into what you talked about, just working as a team, and don't pretend to know everything, and just saying, all right, who does, and how can I support you at that point?
Yeah, it seems like it's always learning. Like every project is so different. I mean, so you must just like always have to have your brain on, and willing to communicate and meet new people. And like I love what Christy said, leave your ego at the door so we can get through this and build this together. Corey, before you were at the airport, I know you said you worked in a few other places. Do you have a favorite project that you worked on?
So before I was at the airport, I was managing projects for SoCal Gas, doing safety enhancements for their pipelines throughout Southern California. I think for a while I was working on a lot of long transmission pipelines that were existing underground structures, just testing them and making sure they were still up to code and safe. And then my favorite project on that job was when we built a new filtration station, which was the first time I got to work above ground on a project. And it was this whole interconnected system of pipeline coming in and out, where they would filter the gas and make sure it was clean. And that was when I really realized I was much more passionate about vertical construction rather than the underground work. And so since then, I think my current project is actually my favorite project, working at Terminal 4. But what Ty said that really spoke to me was the idea that every day is different when you work in construction. And it's really what's quite exciting about our work. I know for me, it doesn't get monotonous because, each day there's some new challenge that shows up that you didn't expect. You're always putting out fires left and right. It could be, like you said, something wrong with working with Warren Meadows. If there's an electric issue that wasn't per plan, so you have a design in hand that doesn't work, and you have to just think on your toes and figure out a solution. And in my role as a project manager overseeing it, it's a lot of working with people and putting your ego aside. I try and focus on just it's most of my role is really people and relationships. Often it's about making sure you enjoy working with the people, because you all rely on each other as a cog in the machine that is working on billions of dollars of construction. There's so many different people that have to get the thing done right that you must enjoy who you work with and keep the relationship strong. So it's partly coordinating, working together, working on around an issue on Thursday night at 5, you have a problem come up, and because you've got a good relationship with the architect, you can call them and say, you know, I know it's late, but we need an answer on this issue right now. Can you help us out? And it's always exciting. It's fun.
Yeah, I could definitely see those late night, early morning. There was always someone in our office. I'd get there at 6 and I was always last, way last. And I remember I would be even in charge of the food truck, and I had it coming at 9, and that was not early enough. They were like, they had been working already for hours and hours, and I just did not understand that at all. The airport, there's always some kind of challenge that's happening. You know, the one thing I was doing out there too was I was in charge of making sure that everyone's badge had the right doors on there. And I would get calls from some of the field people, and they'd be like, well, they changed the door number, so now the door numbers don't match. And they had no idea, there was no number on the door. It was just like going through doors was a big part of my job, just getting people into the rooms to get into those little spots.
Yes, the badging office is fun to work with. We have a whole system of the security at the airport. So it's a whole added layer of challenge at the airport, trying to maintain security, maintain a completely functioning airport while you're building a whole new terminal around it. It's got its whole additional level of challenge, but it's fun.
Yeah, they would go look for some, like a room, and they're like, the room is just not there anymore. And I was like, what? The room's not there. I was just there. I just saw the number. It was definitely challenging to get to that. And like you said, sometimes it would be, 10 o'clock at night, 2 in the morning, 4 in the morning, and they would just be working. And that's, construction probably that, happens a lot. But I felt it at the airport very, very, very many times. Christy, do you have a favorite project that you'd like to share about?
I have 2. I was going to see if I can talk about them really quickly.
Sure.
Vertical is fun. I agree with Corey and Ty. So my first project out of school was that the Stockton Arena and the ballpark. But the arena was really fun because it had a curtain wall. It had an ice rink. So I saw like 13 miles of pipe getting, placed and then poured over. And then they had, of course, the trusses and the rakers and the stadium seating. Like, it was just like mind blowing, even though it was in Stockton. So that was really fun. And I saw it from ground up, from the dirt to all the way to opening day. And they had a concert. I can't remember. Oh, in the hockey game. So that was fun. But I think the most rewarding one is actually when I worked on the Expo line, the light rail that connects downtown to Culver City, just because I think it's more impactful for folks, because when we're building it, and when I say building, I'm analyzing issues, trying to get it through. We weren't sure if people were going to be riding it, right? If you remember, that's kind of the first besides the purple line, the red line in LA, that they're like, oh, let's see if people are going to be riding the public transit. And when it opened, I remember they didn't have enough cars. Like, it was full. And then when it connected to Santa Monica, it was always at capacity. And I wrote it myself. And I just feel like it was a very complicated project because you have issues, right away. And then there's schools that, safety, and there were a lot of changes. It was over budget, and delayed. But in the end, the work product, I think when I drive by it, I still think like, oh, wow, I'm getting I helped get someone to go home at a low cost, and they didn't have to sit in traffic for 2.5 hours. And that's, I thought about that because when you said, why do people, construction workers so early, it's because they usually can't afford to live where the projects are. So they're commuting in from like 3 hours away, because in Stockton, the project, most people commuted from Fresno, like Sierras, and in San Francisco too, they had to haul through that 580 pass. And here, a lot of people commute in from Inland Empire. So I know, I just wonder if we were able to build more light rails, people don't have to wake up so early and sit in traffic for so many hours. And I don't understand the everything, but I do know that, you know, that exists, you know, people not able to get to work because they can't afford to live where they work. Yeah.
I'm a big metro rider, so I appreciate that. I love riding the metro over to, I live in Los Feliz, so I ride the metro to the beach and back. It's just great, or like maybe take a Lyft one way, but take the metro back, and save like $50 or something, so I love it. And that Culver City spot is a perfect location to just go. And, there's so many restaurants right there. And that station it's huge. So it's a cool spot. I'm a big fan of the metro and vertical transportation. They just did like a little video or an event with Schindler Elevators. So we were talking about actual vertical transportation, and it was just really cool. All the things that they were talking about with elevators and lifts and all the things that they're building with them. Selena, I'll ask you if you have a favorite project that you've worked on that you like to share about.
Yes, not as big as any of the ones that have been mentioned already, but one in particular, it was a bowling alley. And I don't know why it's one of my favorite projects, but it was just seeing it come alive from start to finish, being able to build. So I was a carpenter then, and my job was to build the bowling floor, right? And so I had, put the trusses up, and I'm sorry, not trusses. Oh my gosh, I lost the word. The I-frames and the bowling returns and all this stuff. It was just to see it come alive. And then once it finally opened, right, this is a place that I can go to, take my friends, and I'm, we're out there. I'm like, we're standing on something I built. So for me, it was one of my favorite projects. Christy, I love the fact that you worked on. So I live in Stockton. I don't know if I mentioned that. I live right around the corner from the stadium. So
wow.
Yeah, and the commute. As an apprentice in the construction, you have to be willing and able to commute, right? It's a if you want to stay busy, you want to stay working, right? A lot of the work is more like in San Francisco and in San Jose and in Southern Cal. But, just for me, getting up in the morning, riding the BART, I don't know, it's similar like to a metro, right? And going to work. I think even though the bowling alley was one of my more memorable projects, me working for Otis Elevators was absolutely empowering and amazing, because no matter where I go, every time I get into an elevator, everybody's like, oh God, here we go. Selena's gonna say, I helped build this. Like my daughter, I just came. Huh? Yeah, I just, sorry. We just came from a trip in San Diego. My first time going to San Diego this last weekend, and we got into the hotel, and it was an Otis elevator. And my daughter, she's 15. She's like, "Oh gosh, here we go." She's like, "Guess what, everybody? My mom's gonna tell you this story." So for me, as an apprentice, construction is empowering, but it's not a easy walk on. It takes hard work and dedication, right? A lot of grit, a lot of sweat, blood, and tears to move forward and power through these projects. But for me, my most memorable trade, whether it was the carpenters or the elevator union, was definitely the elevator union. It's like a little badge of honor. I got into the trade to the elevators. So yeah, Paulette, really, really cool that you guys had a event with Schindler. Really cool. So yeah, that's my most memorable.
I'm a big fan of elevators. I remember I read a novel, and the Otis elevator was actually kind of like a main character because it was in like an apartment building. So everything that happened was like kind of in the elevator, like, you know, you go to the store, you come back, you meet up, you do all these things. And it was like about all these different families and how they use this Otis elevator. And from there, I was like, oh yeah, that is really cool. Elevator. And then now I noticed too, Otis. And then I didn't know much about Schindler, but now since we've done that, I've seen more Schindler elevators too. But Otis is what I see all the time, like those old ones, like back east and stuff like that. They're just really, really cool. And what I did learn is there's only been one time where an elevator failed. An airplane flew through the Empire State Building. Anyway, this is what Schindler said. Airplane flew through both sets of cables and the elevator fell, but it fell on all the rubber, you know, all the ties or whatever. So the woman survived. So that was it. They said that's been the only story in history. Pretty impressive.
That's impressive. It is a dangerous trade. I've been in the elevator shafts and the pit, putting on counterweights. Very, very scary. Being in a shaft and as you mentioned, you know, how the elevator stopped on there's stops, right? So there's a bottom, right? You know, kind of like a crawl space in a sense. And so that's what saved that woman. But I've been under there. And so I've had an elevator literally sitting on top of my head, like super scary, but very, very an empowering and rewarding and financially rewarding career to get into. So thank you.
It is very cool. Yeah. Yeah. All these things that I'm doing now too, I wish I would have known about them. Like I wish I would have known about elevators in high school. I was like, that would have been a great job.
And so Paulette and everyone, even though, so now that I do the advocacy work, I'm actually doing a workshop for women to help them apply into the elevator union. We've got an event coming up in November, but that's, you know, we want to get the word out that the elevators is one of the trades where you don't see, you don't see a lot of women in the trades, period. But with the elevators, it's, you know, we want to get more women into that trade. So I will be definitely, if you got any questions, I'd love to get some more women involved with that. So.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And I met Selena just a few weeks ago. And since then, I've already had a million things in my head, like after this panel that I'll be following up with her to connect. And I think that is also, just the beauty of construction. Like, we've been talking about the networking part of it is just so great, right? You have to connect with other people. So it is really, really just a fun, always changing, never a dull moment, industry. So let's see, let's start, Ty. What do you look for in an employee?
I will mute myself. There you go. Let's see. Maybe we'll just talk about new grads here. So when interviewing new grads, I really just look to see if the person can be a part of the team. They don't necessarily need to have played a team sport, but I think those characteristics really do help. Like I mentioned earlier, construction truly is a team sport where we do have to talk and coordinate with all the other disciplines, whether it's the client, right, the owner, the architects, engineers, other design partners, or even the tradespeople. Just having to be able to communicate with everyone is key. So what I always tell people during the interview process is we'll teach you everything you need to know. You just have to want to learn. So in essence, for me, like the two things I really look for is, can the person fit in and be part of the team, and do they want to learn? So pretty simply, that's what we look for. And then everything else we can teach you.
That sounds fantastic. Christy, what about you? What do you look for in an employee?
Yeah, same with Ty. It's someone who can work with everyone, even when they don't like somebody, because you get on a project with like 100+ people, there's going to be a few people you just can't stand, but you have to work with them. You have to work through the process and learn their language, because they're not going to learn yours. You learn how to motivate them, how you can influence their decisions. And yeah, you can do that as a new hire, as a college student graduating, you can do that. And I've seen that successfully done by, actually, I don't know if you guys agree, but and feel free to chime in. People with big families seems to have that kind of skill set down. Maybe because they have to argue or convince people different things. Second is people I've seen who get involved in like AAae or some other high school or college or Circle K, Key Club, where they have to navigate around other board members to make things happen where you're equal, right? You're not like somebody's boss, but you have to figure out how to influence your peers to accomplish things. And I think the other thing I was, when Ty said that, I thought, oh, another thing is empathy. And I know that's kind of a new word in this world, but I think more and more I realize that actually a good claims analyst, I emphasize empathy, because we can't just go in and say, well, Corey screwed that project up and that's why he claims. No, we have to kind of see it from Corey's point of view during construction. What kind of pressure was he under? What kind of decisions he had to make, and why, because that then leads to the solution. Like, okay, how can we resolve these things? And so often, and Selena, you can tell me in the field, there are so many people who walk around think they know everything, and they don't think that they don't want to know what you think because they already know everything. So they can't understand what and why things happen. So.
Absolutely. I agree. Empathy and being open and willing to learn from one another. Teamwork, as Ty said, again, it's very important. Goes a long way. Attitude. I tell the women I talk to, attitude is everything, right? We may not agree, but we all have, one common goal, and that's to get the job done. So yeah.
Corey, did you want to add anything to that?
Sure. So yeah, no, I think one of the exciting things when you're new in the field is that everyone expects, not that they don't expect much of you, they expect that you have a lot to learn and want to help bring you along in the field. And so what I think is mostly look for with young employees is an eagerness to learn and, accept that they don't know everything just yet, but want to learn. And with construction, there's so many different parts you can dive into the details of. Like one day you have an issue with conduit, the next day you have an issue with the structural system, the next day you have an issue with the concrete, and each of them have so many different parts that you need to dive into details of. And I'm sure a lot of the young people on here might be art engineer backgrounds, and you get used to learning how the engineering behind the scenes goes, but then in the field, it's really putting it to the ground. So yeah, I think the eagerness to learn and really take advantage of the fact that people don't expect that you know everything just yet, and go ask as many questions as you possibly can. I know my first few construction projects, I was just badgering my project managers with questions and asking around the field, and accepting that there was a lot to learn, and it's been really helped me along in my early career.
Yeah, so I imagine that you run into a lot of challenges too when you're either in office, in the field, when you're dealing with all these different people and personalities, moods, depending on what's happening. I often could recognize the mood of my office as I walked in at 6:30, what had already happened. If I saw someone that looked like they just woken up because they had their little bed there overnight, because all of those things. What are your biggest challenges that you come across, and how do you deal with them?
So the biggest challenges for me in project management, I think I mentioned, is a lot about communication and making sure everyone's on the same page. So for managing airport construction, I've got the real challenge of trying to keep Terminal 4 fully functional and moving while we're trying to build $1 billion worth of work at the terminal. So for me, there's so many different departments at the airport that keep that thing functioning and moving along, from operations to janitorial staff to, you know, just a wide variety. And so my role is communicating between the airport's functioning staff and the construction team, and making sure that everyone's communicating what the plan of the work is for the day. And so we've got all these processes and procedures of our work plans, and, you know, just moving one piece of material from point A to point B at the airport is super challenging, because you can't do it around passengers. You might have to do it overnight. And so it's really the real challenge is communicating and making sure everyone's on the same page and bought off on the work plan day by day.
Yep, definitely. Lots of things happening out there for sure. Let's see, Salita, what are some misconceptions about your profession in comparison to the realities of it?
When I when I talk to women, you know, the misconception is that the trades aren't for women, right? We kind of hear that a lot, but big misconception. The trades are for women. We can do it. And, you know, from my experience, some of the women say, you know, it's too dirty. I don't want to get into that. And not all trades are dirty. I mean, it's hard work. It's, you know, most of them are labor intensive, but, you know, not all the trades are dirty. And you could still keep your, and still be feminine, right? A lot of women think, oh, you know, I can't be feminine and be in a male dominated industry. And that's totally not true. You know, I have many women who, or I have many friends, sorry, who, you know, still dress up, you know, when we're ready to go on a night on a town, put on our stilettos and have fun, and still rock a hard hat, a safety vest, and a drill in the morning for work. So, you know, for me, that's been a you know, just trying to break those barriers with women. Like, this is something you can do if you want to. You put your mind and you want to do it, you can do it. And women really do exceed in construction.
That's awesome. What do you tell, you know, you're talking to students, you're, you know, on this other end, the advocacy side, what do you tell students? What do you tell women? What do you tell, you know, how do you introduce this industry to them? How do you get them involved?
Good question. So, really just getting the word out, right? At 35 is when I first heard of a carpenters union. And I really don't want that for anybody. I don't want people to not know of this. And that's why I teamed up with Build California, right? They are an amazing organization that really focuses on outreach and communication and empowerment to the younger generation of, hey, these trades are out there. They don't have to be these fallback careers. They could be your first career, your first choice. And so I you know, that's also my passion, is the same thing, educating and empowering. And so that's kind of how I you know, get the word out. I host monthly workshops. I do outreach, just letting them know, hey, these are out there. If you want to pursue it. I educate women on just, you know, the trades, the culture, and the benefits of actually being in construction.
That's great. I love it. I'll help you do that as well. Ty, what is the most important thing that you gained out of school that helped you transition from a student to a professional?
Ooh, good question. Sorry, first and foremost, my phone's been blowing up, so the Dodgers did come back and win, by the way. But I think that the biggest thing that I learned, so multitasking, I'm just kidding, is about really networking and maintaining networks early on. So the friends that you have, the classmates that you have, the folks that you meet, continue to network with them and make it a priority to connect, right? Because these are the same people that you're going to sit across from, that are going to be the decision makers. These are the same people that are going to be building your buildings. These are the same people that you're going to be collaborating with. So that's, I think, the biggest advice I can give, students coming up is make sure that networking is like at the top of your list and a big priority.
I second that for sure.
I
Great
definitely
advice.
agree. Yep, yep. I mean, being a part of like a AAae, different organizations, AAae, Tradeswomen Inc., anything like that, I kind of equate it to being, in a fraternity or sorority. You have those connections for the rest of your life, right? You can always tap back into that. But if that's not for you, these kinds of organizations, AAae is $8 for student membership. I mean, it's a deal, right? And then you get this access to mentors and people in the industry that just want to help. They really, really, want, like, I've just met so many people that they want to share what they learned with you. They want to make it a little bit easier for you, from what I found.
Yeah, me and Christy have talked about this too. Like the organizations that you're talking about, whether it's AAae, ACE, or any of these other organizations that are out there, if you're like a shy person, that's like the best way to get in, right? Like you can meet a couple people at a time, meet one person at a time, and it helps with just your public speaking skills. It helps with that social awkwardness that I think all of us have a little bit of, especially going through the pandemic, right? Like I had my first event a couple of weeks ago and I was like, where did I put my hands? Like as often as we did it prior, if you don't continue to do that, you kind of just lose it.
Yeah, Christy, would you like to add anything to that?
Yeah, I'd like to add some stories because I got this job during the last recession because of a ASCE connection. And then when I was laid off, I went to an ACE conference in San Diego. It was free for mentors. I tagged along with somebody, but it was in San Diego. There was a lot of people there. And I met people who took my resume and said, oh, I know you're a mentor, you must be a good person. And I'll look into, and I got some interviews from that connection, just, that's through ACE. And then I've actually gotten billable work at work from people who went to school with me, and I used to organize events at school. So they recognized my name and they saw my LinkedIn profile and said, oh, Christy was okay back then, so she might be able to help me now resolve some issues on my project. And so it's all like part of the networking and people knowing that you're not some crazy lady out there. And like these forums are interesting because I think that we are getting to know each other. I'm going to hit Corey up for some aviation work. It sounds so fun. Hopefully not in claims, maybe just doing something else. But in knowing Ty and Selena now, because my niece and nephew are now interested in construction because I take them on job site walks. I mean, they can't be on site, but the projects I work on, you can kind of look at them from the sidewalk. And now my nephew's been saying, I want to be in construction. And I can now say, oh, I know someone who can maybe take you on a site and teach you how to become someone, because he does not want to go to college. And that's just fine. No, not everyone needs to go to college. It's not the path for everyone. And yeah, he hates school. So, let's not put him there. So I think that's something to consider, like the networking, being a good person, is key. And I think knowing as many people as you can. Again, it goes back to, you don't have to like everyone, you don't have to be their best friends, but you got to understand them and listen and work with them.
Definitely. So yeah, we are all working with different, everyone's kind of getting into this industry a little bit differently. Corey, what are some tips would you suggest to prepare students that wanted to get into, what you're doing?
Yeah, I think seeking out internships and work experience is really, really valuable. For me, when I was graduating from college, there was always the question, was it good to go back and try and get a master's, or was it time to go out into the working field? And for me, graduating civil engineering at Berkeley, I was pretty exhausted from how challenging school was and ready to try something else. And so I got an internship the year between my junior and senior year of college, and really fell in and liked the work, liked the project management side, and was able to gain experience and, you know, get my foot in the door, which led to a job the following the summer on the same program coming out of school. So for me, it was really, you know, seek out internships, seek out work connections through that, and then see where that can take you on. And in terms of experience and other folks to work with, I think, you know, as everyone's mentioned in these organizations, you get a lot of opportunities to interact with professionals who are always eager to get folks coming out of school to come join the company and, you know, grow with the company. So it's a good opportunity to, you know, network and meet people. And then one thing else I wanted to mention, Christy, I think mentioned folks, or Christy and Ty. So Ty mentioned someone who is shy and may not be comfortable, you know, talking with a lot of folks. And then Christy mentioned, you know, you don't have to go through school. So I had a coworker who came and joined over on one of my construction projects on the Delta Hangar, and he was particularly shy folk and was, you know, quiet and reserved and worked within his own space. And, you know, after a while, getting more and more comfortable in construction, you know, he's really come out of his shell, you know, focused and gotten confident in his work product and confident in what he knows in construction. And it's really changed his, you know, demeanor. And with all of our coworkers, it's been really cool to see him come out of his shell. And now he's out there managing the contractor, telling them, you know, that's not done correctly, that's done correctly, this is, you guys gonna have to work overnight, you know, really directing the work and being confident in what he's managing. And it's been really exciting to see. So if you do feel you're shy or something, there is opportunity still in construction to come manage work and, you know, get comfortable in that regard.
Yep. Once again, something for everyone, always. This industry, it's so wonderful. So great. Let's see. So since it is construction inclusion week, I'm going to ask a few questions. Ty, and we did talk about it, Christy, a little bit. Your family was kind of driving your direction, and your family still does not accept everything that you're doing. You know, so thanks for sharing that. Ty, did you have any cultural or your background affect you in any way in your career, and how did you deal with that?
It's a good question. I think growing up in LA, we got to live and see and feel a very diverse culture. And then where I chose to go to school was not very diverse. So I went to San Luis Obispo in early 2000s. My class was 80% Caucasian. And I learned very quickly that my background and where I grew up was not on the same, I would say, educational level as some of these other students. What I mean by that, we started having these discussions and they're like, oh, come to my dorm, check this out. I was like, where did you do that? Like, oh, we had this AutoCAD class, you know, that we were doing, we created a car. And I was like, huh, I've only heard of AutoCAD through AAae. Like, how'd you get access to that program, right? So we started going through some of these discussions, and what I realized was that I just need to work harder than them, because at this point we all got into the same place and everything is level at this point. So what do you do with those opportunities, right? Could have easily said, okay, like, we didn't have these opportunities growing up, fine. What are you gonna do with it now? And then just like we're talking about networking, just talking to people, you'll learn very quickly that people want to help you, right? So like some of my best friends are from college, and we would sit down and they're like, oh, this is how you do it. This is what I learned. So I think in that regard, it was, yeah, there's a little bit of a disadvantage. So what I took from that was when I started interviewing with companies, I asked them about the AAae Metro program, which is an extremely diverse program, right? We're talking about tradespeople, we're talking about folks from quote unquote poor schools. I just said, are you a part of the program? And if not, can I start it up for you? Ultimately chose PCL because it was a diverse company. And they ultimately said, hey, we're not, but please spearhead this for us, right? So we are now in 4 schools in California. We're a national sponsor of AAae. Give money every year. And I took that into work as well, because started looking around and started looking at some of the leaders. And no offense to anybody, but it was just all Caucasian males at the very, very top. So people started saying, well, can I ever get there? Right. And then when I finally got there in 2016 and became manager of special projects, the amount of people from the minority group, female group, that came up and just said, we support you because you look and sound like us, right? So now there's all of a sudden a responsibility, to Selena's point, to send the elevator back down for everybody else, and to continue to bring people up. So, long roundabout answer. Yeah, I think there was a little bit of a disadvantage, but what do you do with that at that point?
Well, thank you. That was a great answer. And I definitely, I had some things growing up. I did not grow up in LA. I grew up in the Central Valley. I grew up in Bakersfield, where, before Amazon, we would come to LA to do grocery shopping. We would just come, we'd come to LA. We would just hop in the cars a couple of hours. We would hit IKEA, look for prom dresses, and go grocery shopping. We just didn't have that. My family also was like, we wouldn't let us fill out like a lot of scholarship applications and things like that, because they were just very, very private. So try applying for financial aid when your mom is like refusing to give you any answers for anything. There's just no way to do it. So, I went to Fresno State. It was great, it's all fine. But, there are some things, everybody grows up with different, in any household, right? Everybody grows up with some things that, does affect you in your job. Does anybody else want to add anything? Construction Inclusion Week today, talking about unconscious bias. So bringing it all full circle.
I just love the advice of networking. That as a Black woman trying to hustle up, or quote unquote solicit my first contractor to get into a job, it didn't work so well, right? There's when you go out on a job site as a woman, and they see you and you're all excited and you're like, hi, I'm ready to, will you hire me? I'm ready to work. And they're like, oh God, it's a girl, right? But when the guy comes in right behind you, hey, I'm ready to work, and they're just like, yeah, sign right here. It's tough, but I am persistent, and I would give that advice to students is don't quit, be persistent. It is the trades are competitive. No matter which trade you get in, it is competitive. For me, being a Black woman in the trade, networking has paid off for me tremendously. That's how I got my first job with Turner Construction. So that would be, just kind of piggyback on what they said earlier is, get out there, rub some shoulders with some folks, because, it's, they say there's no nepotism. Well, that's not necessarily true, right? Someone's gonna say, hey, I've got this, I've got this friend, this lady, Christy, man, she's amazing. She's looking to get into the trades, and there's like, oh yeah, bring her on. And that's how, you start there, and then your work ethic, your attitude, that creates, and how you work, how you work, it all creates your own calling card, your own name. Because then all of a sudden Corey's gonna be like, hey, well, I heard Christy's great over there. Like it just creates this amazing circle, right? So that would be my advice. Definitely networking, having a good work ethic. If you do decide to go the apprenticeship route, that like I did, all apprenticeships offer free upgrade classes. And so when I got into the carpenters as an apprentice, I said, well, okay, I'm done with this class. And they said, oh, we've got a journeyman upgrade classes. You want to learn how to read blueprints, commercial blueprints? And I was like, oh yeah, sure. And I'm taking these classes. And so when I'm out there on the job site as an apprentice, oh, we need somebody to read blueprints. And none of the apprentices could do it, but I could do it because I had some extra time and I took these free upgrade classes. So training, keep educating yourself. That's definitely, that would be my advice. So.
I definitely agree. The networking is so important. My advice to students is always ask a ton of questions, take advantage of everything that's coming your way, apply for every scholarship, apply for every internship. And of course, you mentioned internships. We put high school kids into, they're called they're kind of in their internships, but we don't call them that because we're high school students, but they make a huge difference, you know, in solidifying the path. We do have a question. So we'll ask Corey this one. What separates the construction career path from the architect and civil design career paths? Or anybody, if anybody wants to answer that.
Sure. So for me, the difference was, you know, as an engineer, you've got two options, very broad, but it's you can either go the design side or you can go the project side. And so for me, the design side, it felt like a lot more time at your desk, you know, focused on working through calculations and AutoCAD and different, you know, focused design efforts. And on the other side of the construction project management side, it was a much more dynamic experience that I was interested in. You know, you're on a project site every, you could be, you know, running meetings, working, coordinating different departments and different folks, overseeing, you know, you still get involved in the design effort and work with the engineers and the architects, and you have to coordinate them and coordinate all their different design efforts and have them come together towards a project on and meet certain deadlines. And then you also have the field side of things. You've got to make sure it's actually constructible and workable, and you're focused on you know, meeting those deadlines. And so it's a different dynamic experience when you're on the construction side rather than on the architect or engineer side. From my experience, where we're getting a little bit more hands-on experience.
Yep, that makes sense. Christy, do you want to add anything to that? You did you touched on that a little bit earlier. Do you want to add anything to that?
Not really. I think Corey explained it well, but I wanted to add to the previous question if I can on the inclusion. So I just would encourage everyone to, if they see or hear anything that is being said that is not right, to step in and not worry about your job or your career, or your relationship, because I wish people have done that for me. And so I do that for others now. If people have asked me why I didn't change my last name if I got married, it's none of your business. And now if somebody else asks a young lady at work that, I will step in and say it's none of your business, because I have to say a lot of young folks that when I was younger, I didn't feel like I was empowered to say anything. I had an owner come up to me and say, hey, we need to test a shower. So why don't you get in a bathing suit and jump in there so we can get a show? Nobody said anything. No one said for me. And I was 24, 25. I didn't know any better. So I didn't get in a bathing suit, but I just stood there and I was like, I don't know what to do. And I looked around, all these older people were around me and they didn't say anything. And then there was another meeting, they said, you know, another project said, oh, well, why is a woman in here? This is not a conversation. And they're talking about cabinets. And I'm sorry, I was the cabinet trade, you know, person. So I just hope that we can take away from construction inclusion that it's not over yet. There's still things that being said and done that are to everyone, gender, race, or even religion. You know, I've had a guy who's Arabic on the job who, like, someone just, I mean, for no reason, except for the fact that he's from Jordan, said, oh, he's a terrorist, I can't work with him. And it's like, come on, guys, it's 2021, you know? So I'm sorry to like say, kind of preach this, but if you see something and something is wrong, you will sleep better, I think, if you say something rather than worry about, well, that's a client, that maybe that shouldn't be your client. Maybe you need to fire your client or your coworker, and maybe they need sensitivity training. So I just feel like I need to say that, because we don't all, as a, you know, someone who's graduating, maybe you don't feel empowered to say something, but I'm telling you that you can. And the higher position you go, I think the more influence you'll have.
Well said.
Yeah. Yeah, very well said. Absolutely. I'm way more mouthy now than I was in my, ever. And it just gets, and you just learn to how you say things, and you can say them and not being taken like, getting taken by surprise. That's the worst when you're trying, when that happens. So, and then you don't have a good response for that. But yeah, I agree with
And I want to,
everything you
and
said.
so just to add, not everyone knows what they're saying. So if you turn it into kind of a joke or like, oh, you don't really mean that, you don't care. And maybe pull them aside, because a lot of times they still don't understand what they said is wrong, but you don't need to embarrass them. So that's kind of the art I think you're talking about.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, art. I'm going to start using that. That's a way better term to use that with. Yeah. Well, we are close to the end. Do you have any questions for each other? I mean, I've learned so much, and I mean, I will be talking to all of you, again in the future for many different things, ACE internships, AAAe panels, Does anyone have any final words that they would like to share here?
No,
I,
having us. Yeah.
I think all of you make great mentors. The advice you've all given has been so inspiring to me, and I'm sure to our audience. I would like to connect with everyone after this call, because I'm empowered and inspired just by your individual stories.
Oh yes, Selena, you and I will be talking for sure, as with everyone else. All right, well, perfect. I will turn it back over. Corey, did you want to say anything else?
Nothing.
I'm going to turn it back over to Crystal to wrap up the event. Thanks again, you guys. This was really, really fun. I learned a lot. It was really fun to see everybody too.
All right. Thank you to the panelists. That was very enlightening. That was powerful advice. Thank you to the participants for joining us. We have these recordings on YouTube for the whole series, so please check them out and share with anyone you think would be interested in viewing them. Please let us know what contents you would like to see for the future webinars in the survey. You can check out that QR code on the slide, and connect with us on social media. So stay tuned for more information in the near future. And that's it. Thank you and good night.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Right. Gonna stop record.